misfits.
All right, you ragtag bunch of misfits.
You're a scrappy little misfit, just like me.
Biggest bunch of misfits I ever seen either.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into a special edition Misfit podcast. Every 8 to 10 weeks or so on this podcast, we talk about the upcoming programming phase at Misfit Athletics. And this year we got a little bit of a curveball thrown our way, not just with when the Open was, but the importance of the Open this year. So we're going to be talking about Open Prep today. And that starts Monday, January 13th, misfitathletics.com. We are going to be turning the 14-day free trial back on. So you're going to get 2 weeks of the 6-week peaking schedule for free. You're going to be able to go in, see the way that we program, get yourself familiarized with it. And we feel like that is the greatest sales pitch that we can have for our programming. Now, a lot of people that listen to the programming episodes let us know that kind of on one side, there's the athlete who likes these because they like to get into the nitty gritty. Hunter, you good over there?
Yeah, we are. You can carry on. I'll explain will almost certainly happen throughout this podcast. Sorry.
Okay, got it. I don't understand.
I am the only open gym coach here, and due to putting that I am on a podcast, come in quietly if you need me on the office door, that has subsequently invited multiple members to provide me with a holy donut. Katie just set this on the floor. This is a coffee cake. I have a mimosa, and I have my coffee. So
that's
and
beautiful.
we're about to receive another gift here. Yep,
I thought so. There's a
much.
toddler
now I have
stomping.
Butter. It's unclear what this is for, but
you put the butter in the mimosa, I think.
Yes.
I have a toddler stomping around above my head and a dog barking, so I thought you could hear them.
No, I wish I could. That sounds fun.
Yeah. All right. So why we do these podcasts, what people tell us about them. Basically, there are some people that are bigger into the programming side of things and just sort of enjoy the nitty gritty of how we program, why we program. And then other people talk about it being a bit more of like a rallying cry of like, I like when you guys let us know that we're going to be doing something different, that we're focusing on something different. And then for those of you that are new to all of this, it's a bit of an audition from us to say, here's how we program, here's why we program the way that we do. There are a lot of programs out there that think that they have maybe some, proprietary blend of herbs and spices, and they don't want you to peek behind the hood of 5 rounds of 10 overhead squats and 25 calorie row because they've changed the world with that. We see it in the opposite way. We feel like coming in here to podcast and talk shop about how we do things lends more credibility to our program and all that good stuff. So again, Open Prep starts Monday, January 13th. We're going to do the 14-day free trial. I want to cover the 3 programs really quickly and be very clear about that at the beginning of the podcast. So 99.9% of the people listening to this podcast right now that are prepping for the Open should follow our Hatchet program. The Hatchet program is essentially for anyone who is not like 100% positive that they're going to qualify for online semifinals. So we're talking about, that means that between men and women, maybe 2,000 people on Earth would appropriately be following the MFT program. If you are putting a bunch of eggs into the basket of, I want to be ready for the Open this year so that I qualify for the online semifinal, you should be following the Hatchet program. And that's the majority of what we're going to be talking about on the podcast today. And then the age group one is a bit more complicated, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But if you are a masters or teen athlete and you're not like trying to win the CrossFit Games, you should follow our age group program, and we'll just provide you with information along the way.
Yeah, and I'd also just add like the change in like who qualifies for the semifinal makes this a little bit, there's a gray area, right? Because the 100th fittest person in the world and the 2000th fittest person on the world
Right.
are two very, very different athletes.
Absolutely.
Like, I've landed in the top 2,000 or 3,000 like once or twice. I am absolutely not qualified to do the MFT programming. So
Right.
I would say, like, if you are on the fence, if you're like, kind of on the upper end of that 2,000, that theoretical 25% number, like, you will definitely benefit from the Hatchet program. You might get buried by the MFT program. I would say they're like, it's just kind of almost underestimate yourself a little bit. Do the Hatchet program, or overestimate yourself. Do the Hatchet program. Fuck.
How much of that mimosa did you have?
Not enough, apparently.
So
Take a quick sip.
the way that I would do it, if you truly are on the fence,
Ooh, that's pretty good,
games.crossfit.com, you type your name in, you bring up your profile. If you are top 1,000 every single year that you've done the Open, then let's talk about you following MFT. If you're not, if you're between 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 in that range, you should be on the Hatchet program anyways. But there are a lot of people that will need to switch from MFT to Hatchet at this point in the season, like they've done in the past for quarterfinals prep. We've had an athlete every single year that we've convinced to switch from MFT to Hatchet qualify for semifinals because they went all in on quarterfinals prep. So again, like Hunter said, if you're standing on that fence at all, if you have a pinky toe on that fence, take yourself over to the Hatchet program for Open prep. This peaking schedule is like something that's super powerful. So again, CrossFit threw us a little bit of a curveball here, and it's not the dates, it's the structure, right? It's like the Open kind of turned into quarterfinals in a way. That's a lot of what it seems like they're doing with this. So what that means is, if we're programming in past years and we get those 27 weeks to give you 3 beautiful 9-week phases that lead you into quarterfinals prep, we now have to shift that back and get you guys back over into a peaking schedule while still taking into account the things that we wanted to bias within phase 3. So the cool thing here is we, as remote coaches, are constantly tinkering with programs and program design and peaking schedules and what works for specific athletes. And that's how these things like a peaking schedule for competition make their way onto the blog. We did it last year, the very first time, as a peaking schedule for quarterfinals. And again, got someone to semifinals for their very first time and got like an influx of messages. I personally will take all of the names that I can find on Discord and take the time to copy and paste them into the game site and be like, okay, boom, look at that. That's like 100 places, 200 places, 300 places that we've jumped up here. And I think that's a testament to the programming in general, but also to the fact that we are drawing a line in the sand and bringing some form of competition prep to the masses as opposed to like just this special group.
Yeah, we also do the same thing for people who ask what program they should be on. So if you're somebody who messages us and says, what program should I be on? You're almost certainly going to get a copy-paste 5,000th worldwide Hatchet program it is. So there's no magic selection process that we have.
No.
We're really basing this on your performance in a competitive setting. And again, pinky toes on the line, like out of bounds, like
100%.
follow Hatchet.
Yep. All right. So what is a peaking schedule? How do we do this? How do we get you ready for the Open in a different way? There's essentially a pyramid shape to the volume that you'll have. So week 1 and week 6 are lower volume. Week 2 and week 5 are medium volume. And weeks 3 and 4 have the highest volume. So week 4 is going to be what we refer to internally as Hell Week, and we'll have some content kind of related to that. But essentially what we're doing is at the very beginning, we are making sure that your intensity in the way that you warm up for your lift in your Metcon, and the way that you cool down, and the way that you incorporate your mobility work, and the extra time that you have to make sure that, you know, you're getting your shake in after you cool down, and you're focusing on your nutrition and all this stuff. We bring low volume and incredibly high intensity, or you bring the intensity to the program at the beginning and set those habits. And then as we sprinkle in another lift here, another Metcon here, another interval here, another bitch work piece here, as we get closer to that week 3 and week 4, we're going to be asking you to essentially like we refer to it as becoming a professional, like hold on to those habits. Like you're going to set them now, you're going to dig in. And then as the weeks go on, you're going to fight the urge to go back to like a couple of shoulder circles and a 400-meter jog. And now I'm ready for this piece. So really important, again, at the very beginning is like these habits that are built early on are what's going to make it like appropriate for you to handle the volume in the middle. And then we're going to get really good at sharpening everything on the way back down into week 6, and week 7 will be the open.
Yeah, and I think something to think about as well is like you listening to that general structure is how you can personalize the program a little bit, because there might be a point, or maybe you just at baseline already perform, say, one fewer training piece than what is already recommended. Maybe you only do one thing per day. That would be kind of on the extreme end. Most Hatchet or athletes are probably following like a lift and a conditioning piece. Maybe there's a skill sometimes. So you can personalize that as much as you want, just understanding that kind of structure of, you know, super low volume on the end, and then it gets a little bit higher volume as you get to the middle. The other thing I'd say to that is that, like, as the volume increases, the expectation is not necessarily, God fucking damn it. Come on, Katie. Come on, be on the podcast real quick. What do you got over here? What do we got? We got a bottle of, we got champagne.
Happy
Yep,
New Year, guys.
fantastic. Happy New Year from the members of Misfit Gym Portland. My butter. I've got, is this pea? Is this syrup, Katie? Thank you so much, guys. Happy
I had
New
the wrong
Year.
Katie. I had the wrong Katie in my head. That makes way more sense now.
Yeah, yeah. Over the course of that entire intro, I received 3 bowls of food, 1 bowl of syrup, a mimosa. I have an entire bottle of champagne, and here we are. So, let me revisit the thought that I was on, which was, as you are getting into the middle, the highest volume, the expectation is not that like, oh, I'm doing more, so I need to kind of temper my efforts a little bit. There's obviously a bit of that has to happen, but the expectation is that we might now need multiple training sessions in order to accommodate the intensity that we have to perform at that volume. That's part of what the peaking phase is. It's not just volume for volume's sake of beating you down, because ultimately, for those of you following this, like, you need to be able to go really hard once a week for 3 weeks, right, in the open. You don't need to be able to do three tests in one day like you might need to be able to in in previous quarterfinals, or now this time semifinals. So do not mistake added volume for a reduction in intensity or for trying to cram all of these things into a smaller training session. Like, every little training piece, we talk about this a lot, requires now additional resources put into the recovery side of things. I need more sleep, I need more food, I need more water, I need more general recovery, soft tissue work, because the cumulative effect of that peaking phase will beat the shit out of you. And that's by design, but how well you feel coming kind of back down the mountain as the volume reduces and we go into the competition, that's where all of that recovery and the additional time and energy you're putting into training is going to either show itself as, holy shit, you're a superhuman version of yourself, or holy shit, you just beat the shit out of yourself for 5 straight weeks and didn't do any of the things that you needed in order to see those gains. And now you're hurting going into the open.
If executed properly, when you finish week 4, you should be very, very happy that you're going back down the mountain. And again, not just because of the volume, but because of what you bring to it. This program is very doable half-assed. It might take a lot of time, but it's very doable half-assed.
Yeah, just
if
fucking
you
2.5 hours straight through, no rest. Just keep checking the boxes. Like,
yeah,
anybody
that's
can do
not
that.
going to get what we want. So again, part of the idea with that low volume at the beginning is setting that expectation. And what's cool about it is you'll feel the cumulative effect of the volume increasing over the course of a whole week, but you won't really feel it on a given day, because to add a couple of pieces, like I don't need to add multiple things to every single day. So your Monday might look very similar, and then you've got an extra piece on a Tuesday, and then Wednesday is just like the week before. And that's how we make sure that it's actually possible for you to execute on this stuff. One thing that I tell all of my athletes, because there's definitely a heightened level of like people are excited, but stress comes with that a little bit when we get into any peaking phase, competition phase. Stimulus is king on the way up. So week 1 through week 3 and week 4, that intensity piece of getting your heart rate to the place that we want to, in a muscle endurance piece, getting big sets, like really pushing workouts on the way up, versus gaming them and figuring out the best score, is incredibly important. And then on the way down, that's when it's eyes on the prize. Like you're at the top of the mountain, you've just done this like a brutal slog to get all the way up there, but now you can see everything else that's coming, right? You can see the intensity that you'll be able to do if we lower the volume. And then at the end of that trail is 25.1. It's sitting right there sort of waiting for you, like, hey, after all of this, being able to do this, I'm going to be able to really game the shit out of these workouts and feel the super compensation element of like coming back out from under all of that volume and being able to attack things. So like really when you're getting after it, and make sure that you're not trying to be too cute on the way up. On the way back down, again, we'll have content related to this stuff. We'll sort of keep up with you guys in relation to this, but get after it for those first 4 weeks and then eyes on the prize.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to remember, like, the reason that you get nervous when an open workout gets announced is not because you're looking at something that you've never done before. It's because, like, you know how hard you have to go in order to put up a good score. It's like 19 point whatever, rowing and wall balls. Like, God damn it, I spent all this time working on handstand push-ups and muscle-ups and my rowing and whatnot, and it's like, all we're asking you to do is go really fucking hard for 15 minutes. And it's like, I can't do that. It's like, the reason you can't do that is because you didn't do that in the lead up. You didn't, we jammed the volume. We checked the boxes, but we kind of half-assed it along the way. You participated, you mailed it in a little bit, and then lo and behold, the only thing that the open requires of you is high intensity.
I was looking at the program to prep the notes for this podcast, and I love the workouts that are in here because we had to. So basically, you have MFT phase 3, which is just a sort of a natural progression to get us closer and closer to semifinals and sanctionals or whatever the hell they're called, the CrossFit Games, etc. And then we go over to that open / quarterfinal style movement tracker to make sure we're hitting the movements that we need to. And it looks so much like those old school workouts where you could bury yourself. Yep. A lot of double unders, a lot of wall balls, a lot of rowing, thrusters, toes to bar, just the movements where you can go in and get after it. And if we're going to say stimulus is king, we need to provide you, we need to like lay that out, the yellow brick road. You need to be able to go in and attack things. If we overprogram everything for you guys, that's not going to be possible. And you're going to know exactly what I mean when you log in that first day and see the week laid out in front of you. Like, there are going to be the types of workouts where it's just like, oh shit, because it's so simple.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be nasty. This is going to be super challenging.
Yep.
So the pieces so referenced at the beginning of the podcast that as of maybe August or September, this was going to be phase 3, and then you were going to peak for quarterfinals. There are movements that will still have a slight bias in here just to make sure that we sort of finish that off. But again, all that means is that I'll use the muscle up as an example. Muscle up's one of the movements. You will have misfit sets of muscle ups in skill, and then you'll have them in a workout. and then you'll have Misfit sets and skill the next week, and then you'll have them in a workout. So I don't want people to listen to this and be like, you said this is simple, old school CrossFit, and now we're just going to be doing muscle ups. You're going to be doing muscle ups once a week, once outside of intensity, sort of linear progression, making sure that you're following the idea of the Misfit sets where, if you double your smooth number, then you get to increase, etc. And then we're going to put them back into intensity. So that list is muscle ups, clean and jerks, dumbbell snatch, and handstand push-up variations. So those 4 movements you will see, again, outside of intensity, back into intensity, back and forth. And that just makes sure that we follow the progression of, you did those movements a ton in skill sessions in phase 1. You did them a bunch in intervals and skill in phase 2. And now we're going to bring them more into maybe Metcons, that sort of thing. So it's not something that you need to kind of lock into. But if you've been following the program, some of this stuff's going to be pretty fun, because one thing that's been happening, at least with my remote clients, is those sessions that we've been repeating of either the kipping or strict handstand push-ups. We've been doing those for 18 weeks plus, and the numbers have been like improving a ton over those 18 weeks. And now you get to go put those into, a workout in week 1, and then again, sort of bounce back and forth. So if you have been following the programming, it can be fun to take a look at that and say, wow, I haven't had a handstand push-up workout like that under intensity in a long time.
Yeah, and this is just kind of where the difference between specializing and biasing comes into play, right? It's like we're not specializing in the sense that we're, it's not an 8-week muscle up, clean and jerk, handstand push up phase. It's
right.
Hey, once we're just specifically singling out a couple of these movements and strategically placing them throughout the week such that we are guaranteeing that you are getting exposure to them. And for the most part, I think people follow, they do their 5 full training days. We don't have too many Hatchet athletes who do 3 days per week, for example. So as long as you're following the program, you're going to get that little bias built in without going so far in one direction that it's just like, man, I hope nothing except clean and jerks, muscle ups, and handstand push-ups shows up in the open. That's obviously not the goal.
Right. And the majority of the program, again, we go back to, if you listen to the podcast that dropped a couple weeks ago, that would be honestly a really good one to listen to in conjunction with this, and just a way to think about your training. But we went over the list of what the movements are. That is predominantly what you're going to see. So with the lifting's interesting because it starts off with a bit more of a lower to moderate volume and then increases. But one of the things that's been non-mandatory all year that is now mandatory is the in-workout lifting. We, in the open, especially now that they're going to, I would assume that there's going to be some sort of test that either builds you to a heavier version of the same movement within a Metcon, or a 1-rep max, in 5 minutes, like they've done in the past, following a workout, that sort of thing. So we're going to be doing a rotation of different lifts in a Metcon. And the way that the session is laid out, it'll say something like work up to a heavy set of 2 squat cleans before the workout. So you still get a bit of that, sort of heavy exposure. And then you're going to do, say, a traditional Metcon that has, rowing, toes to bar, and squat cleans in it. And the squat cleans will be at a certain percentage so that you can personalize it, which I think is important leading into the open. To sort of, there's a bit of like a testing element to like, hey, you've been working on your squat cleans and your front squats and all these different things all year long. How do you perform when you're in zone 4, zone 5. We are going to be peaking the snatch. That's probably the most traditional piece of this that's being held on to from the original plan for phase 3. So you're going to be snatching on Mondays and Fridays, depending on how you structure your week. Essentially day 1 of the first block of the 3-day block, and then day 1 or day 2. So you'd be snatching twice a week, and this is a traditional high sets of 3 at a doable percentage, and then that'll build sort of as we go over the course of the phase. one thing that I love that's in here is we have both clean and jerk volume and back squat volume. So we are giving you, and these are one of the reasons why I laugh a little bit.
2011 Drew has entered the chat.
Well, God, I wouldn't. Old Drew would have been volume like 1s and 2s and 3s.
Yeah.
I would have died.
Yeah.
But my remote clients have been doing variations of these throughout the entire year, and I receive lovely messages on Discord, direct messages on Discord related to it. The clean and jerk volume is like power
Easy.
clean to push jerk, sets of 12, sets of 10, sets of 8. One important distinction, and it is in the notes, so it's not something you need to memorize, it's something you need to wrap your mind around, is it's not for time. Like, it is still outside of a Metcon. We do still want you moving really well. So, like, you know, you're doing 12 and you're 7 in and you start to not be able to brace your midline. You have no dip drive, or you are heaving the bar, or you're not actively pulling under it, etc. That's not what we're looking for. It is still anytime, unless otherwise stated in like maybe a lifting test, that we have sets like this, we are looking for you to improve on the movement, not show off that you can do X, Y, and Z. When it comes to the back squat, you don't have a lot of choices. Now, it's not for time, but most people aren't going to sort of try to do that. And there are notes within the back squat as well. Like Hunter and I would be perfect example here. We would definitely use different percentages for volume back squatting, right? Yeah. Like mine would probably have to be a little bit lower and yours could probably trend a little bit higher. Yeah. And what I would tell Hunter if he was following this is I'd say, okay, don't go above whatever it is, 55, 60, 65%. Just stand up faster. Like use it as strength work, that kind of thing. But if you're a fast twitch athlete and you are like truly grinding and you're like dropping to the bottom and hoping the bounce is going to save you, it's too heavy, right? Yep. And we also, like, you categorically do not need to put more weight on the bar. You need to be able to move through moderate weight, while bracing, while using your posterior chain, etc. So there are notes in there for all of this stuff related to the lifting that you'll see. But it's important to just sort of put out there that like volume back squatting is personalized. Like when we're doing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 related to a 1 rep max, especially for a seasoned athlete, it's usually pretty close. When we get up into 12s and 10s and 8s, it is very, very different.
Yeah, at that point we're talking about Metcon weight for some people in certain instances, right? Yeah. And it's like, or a weight that you might see in a conditioning piece, with that movement. But yeah, I mean, I think the only note I'd add on the strength work is like you can kind of remember where we're coming from. Like in phase 2, we're currently in phase 2 at the tail end of phase 2 doing squat clean twice per week, right? So, and then kind of leading into the open, that snatch 2 days per week, I think is a really useful thing to, if nothing else, build confidence for athletes back into the lifting, into that lift specifically. There's nothing worse than, feeling good about a Metcon and maybe getting to that 225, 245, 265 pound barbell. That's just like, I just can't snatch this thing, or it's like the mechanics aren't there or whatever. Having those 2 times per week can really let you move the needle in that movement. And then the other ancillary movements, the back squat that you alluded to, the build to a heavy X movement on that day 1 kind of gets you exposure to a whole bunch of different movements. But we're talking clean snatch, clean jerk, back squat, like a lot of capacity, large loads, long distances quickly, movements that we're going to see in quarterfinals, in the open and semifinals. And, it's just like it's the sport specific kind of lifting rotation, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that, again, coming from the remote coaching side of things, CrossFit tends to have, I would say, more over pullers than people that don't hit extension in the lifts. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is because
French toast is so good. Holy fuck.
Part of that's because you learn the power clean, you learn the power snatch first. It can be a lot easier to fling a barbell, to muscle snatch a barbell, to snake snatch a barbell, those different variations.
Oh, it's just a lower technical barrier to entry than having to pull yourself into the bottom of a squat. What if my mobility sucks? What if I hate squatting? What if Austin Malleolo told me to jump through the ceiling with my 20-pound med ball squat clean in my L1? Like, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Shrug. So I felt like that was like the Lil Jon song. It's like
shrug.
Watching people, it's fascinating, the athletes that are like that when we're doing the positional snatch work that's going on in the phase right now, as they get lower and lower in the progression. So like at first you start at mid thigh and then you work your way down to the knee and then you work your way down to below the knee. They don't pull under the bar anymore as you go lower, and it actually becomes harder even though they get more speed from getting to lift all the way from mid shin.
Yeah.
And it's really just this question of, once a barbell gets heavy, can I convince myself to let it travel to my hip before I get aggressive? And it's really interesting to watch this because by definition, if you're over pulling, then you are strong enough to do the movement correctly, better than someone who pulls early, who just tries to sneak under the barbell that doesn't hit extension. And working through that with athletes, I think, is the perfect setup to a peaking phase, because that's the challenge that's presented with most, I would call it, novice to intermediate Olympic weightlifters. As the weight increases, your mind-body connection tells you to do the opposite thing that will get you to lift the weight. As it gets heavier and heavier, you get more and more aggressive earlier on in the lift. Some people start to yank it from the floor. Some people get crazy as it passes the knee. Some people are, too aggressive mid-thigh instead of waiting for it to travel to the hip. So we've, in these last 9 weeks, proved to ourselves we can let the bar travel. We can let it get to the hip. And linear progression allows you to, 2.5% at a time to prove to yourself that you can continue to do the same thing all the way from 60% to 90%. So as you're doing this, it's really about, like, I'm not going to listen to my brain that tells me, the kind of thing where your grip is shot, so you pull in your muscle up instead of using your hips, like that kind of deal. I'm not going to let that happen. And, if you're super nerdy about it, filming yourself and comparing week to week can be super helpful. But I've made a lot of progress with athletes in the positional work, and I'm anxious to see how it makes its way into the peaking phase.
Yeah, and I think the fact that the snatch follows a similar progression as the clean, as far as generally maybe slightly higher volume than maybe a traditional weightlifting program that you might see. Yeah. Percentages start very, very manageable, super low in the 50-ish% range, which, again, if that were a traditional strength building type program, it would probably be a little bit heavier. But the technical side of things is really the dividing line between, say, a CrossFitter and an Olympic weightlifter, where the CrossFitter, like you said, it's weird, kind of counterintuitive, the bar gets heavier, so I pull it, yank it off the floor faster, which you need to a certain extent, but the confidence of pulling underneath the bar quickly doesn't exist. It's just not the same. It's as far as I can feel how heavy the bar is in my hands, in my legs, in my back as I'm pulling it off the ground, whereas, when a coach just says, get under it quickly, it's I got it, but first, this bar is really fucking heavy. It's harder to communicate. Once you get over the fact that the bar is heavy, just sneak under that thing. Even though it is that simple in a lot of instances, the first thing an athlete feels is, holy fuck, the bar in my hands, on my back, coming off the floor is heavy, so I just need to yank. I need the speed. I need to pull it as high as I can. which is again fine. But if you're pulling it as high as you can, then you can almost certainly get underneath it. If we can't stand it up, that's probably a different set of issues.
Yeah, and I don't need to reintroduce a weightlifter to weightlifting volume. You know what I mean? Like that's what they're going to continue to do. I can't put, unless you want to specialize, and this is 7 months ago, I'm not going to put you on 2 days a week of back squatting, 2 days a week of snatching, 2 days a week of clean and jerk, 2 days a week of deadlifting, etc. So when we do this, we have to give you runway. We've written programs, a decade ago where you start in the 70 to 80% range, and half of the population does okay, and then the other half is like, I'm missing lifts already. What the fuck?
Yeah,
and
the people who already move
I gave
well
you
are
20
like,
sets
sick, this is great.
And you did 1 set last week. Like, that's not super helpful. This note has a bunch of smiley faces next to it. The 20-second front squat has returned to Misfit Athletics. Hunter's excited.
Is it
I'm
actually
excited.
a 20-second front squat or a minute and 40-second front squat?
You're gonna have to check the sets. What do we got? Give me. Go to week 2. Go to week 2. Tell me what week 2 says.
Yeah, see, because it's bullshit. Because it's like 5 seconds down, 5 second pause, 5 seconds stand up. Now do that 43 times. Yeah, 7 by 3. God fucking damn it.
Yeah, so it's actually a minute.
A 1 minute squat. That's
Yes.
so much better.
Yeah. This honestly, and this was another one where, especially the back squat was kind of similar. The front squat last year, like some athletes were like, I can do this with 60%. And other athletes are like, I have a training bar, and it's like, you don't do your mobility.
Yeah,
like,
I'm guessing you got a front rack good morning going on here, but
yes, absolutely.
not
so
all
the
of us
positional
are
front
as mobile
squat,
as you though.
No, true. The positional front squat is back with the 20-second. This is a time under tension bomb here. You do not get to count for yourself. I'm just going to throw that out there. You need a clock. You need a friend. It's going to feel like 9 minutes.
Probably
instead
a
of
clock.
1. Yeah, a clock is... This is one where it's slow enough that the clock is possible. You could set a clock in front of yourself and do the 5 seconds down, 5 second pause, 5 seconds up, 5 second pause at the top. That's your 20-second front squat. And as we progress, you get a couple of fun things sprinkled in. You're going to get a pressing complex where you get to work on strict press into push press into jerk. And we're basically just going to sort of work through with that volume. But the majority of the stuff that you're going to be doing is what we just talked about. There is quite a theme to your bitch work for this peaking phase. You are essentially being asked to either row, burpee, double under, or wall ball in this phase in relation to what would be considered monostructural conditioning, essentially. So week 1, you are going to be doing the cube test version of anaerobic CrossFit bitch work. And essentially you're going to be rotating through rowing, wall balls, double unders, and burpees in the 4 minutes on, 4 minutes off for 4 round style. That'll be a hoot. And then you're going to check in on how your aerobic rowing is going. And then on your active rest day, you will be doing rowing. So there is a ton of rowing within this phase, and I did my best to sort of space it out, but you're gonna have the this is my rower, there are many like it. You're gonna have an intimate relationship with the rower. I can tell you right now that if the rower wasn't so amazing in terms of stimulus, this wouldn't be as aggressive as it is. But it's the best machine there is, I think, all around.
It is the best machine, so it is that aggressive.
Yes, yeah. There's no other note there. The only thing that I'll say about the bitch work that exists for only the people that we referenced at the beginning of this podcast that are on the fence. If you are legitimately trying to qualify for semifinals, which again is going to be somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 athletes per gender, then you are going to be doing Zone 2 C2 bike as well. So you'll notice this will be in the instructions. You'll perform the wattage test. So you do the 20-minute FTP test at the beginning, and then you'll do the percentage-based stuff throughout the phase. Obviously, it's not going to be a big deal if someone who's not a semifinals hopeful does more Zone 2 work. I just think the problem is, what else are you not doing? Because it takes a lot of time to do that. So I would say the only rule that I'll throw out there, because I know more people than we want to will do the bike stuff, is that the lift or lifts and Metcon that you're supposed to do need to take precedence. Like, it's
over
Metcon
Zone 2
season over the Zone 2. Yes.
Yeah.
That should take precedence. And if you feel like you still have enough, sort of to give to it, go for it. You can do the Zone 1 version. You get Zone 1 instructions on our website if you need a little bit of a flush. But if you really think you have a shot, adding that extra day is the way that we add volume without beating the shit out of you. And that's honestly the majority of anything that's going to be extra for semifinals hopefuls will be a few more Zone 2 sessions sprinkled in. Because again, it's about how do we give volume without crushing the central nervous system. That is one of the ways that we do it. But the trade-off is time. Like, you have to have the time. I know there are some of our athletes that follow Hatchet that will post in Discord like AM session this, PM session this. That's the kind of athlete I think that's going to be able to sprinkle this stuff in and have it actually be effective.
Yep. Yeah. I think, and you hit the nail on the head. This is not to be a substitution for your Metcon, your interval, or
no.
your higher
not that time
intensity
of
bitch work. It's not. If we think it's that time of year, we just missed the boat for the last 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, always have to say it when we're talking about a bias. The other machines are there. You're going to ski, you're going to echo, you're going to run, you're going to C2 bike. You're going to continue to do those things because constantly varied is at the beginning of the whole spiel, right? Like, that's how we get better at these things. That's how we improve on them. There are effects to local musculature when you ski, when you bike, that has a distinct advantage. The echo bike, I think maybe the adaptation between the ears, I think is a huge part of what happens there. So don't worry, you're not like just going to be sitting on the rower, but I would say if there is something that's being specialized within open prep, it is the rower.
I mean, it's the only machine we're guaranteed to see in the next 2 stages of competition in the online variants. We just can't expect to program a semifinals workout with skiing for 2,000 men and women. Maybe we can, but probably not.
So. Yeah, probably not. Okay, so that is the layout. That's what we're looking for. That's the rallying cry. A couple of things for sort of when you get started in week 1. I love the idea of, and again, this is probably from traditional team sports, and, coaches having themes and, sort of buying into something bigger than yourself, because of your teammates, et cetera, pride that you have in the thing that you do. I love the idea of January 13th being circled on your calendar and feeling different when you walk into the gym. Like, there's a threshold that you cross, a line in the sand that you've drawn. Off-season training, we are focusing on all these different things, and we're working on energy systems and, building base strength and skill, etc. And there's something about, like, walking through and being like, this is my peaking schedule. This is when I'm going to, sort of test out what it's like to be a professional. And the intensity that you can bring, and the idea that there are some pretty big sacrifices that you have to make in your personal life to make something like this happen and dig into it. And it can either be your bridge to becoming an MFT athlete and taking this more seriously, or it can be like, I'm a Hatchet athlete, I'm an open athlete, I like being part of the community, but I'm not, I'm not doing 2 sessions a day, X, Y, and Z. So we're going to ask just about everybody to play the role of a professional, to try it out, to test it out for 6 weeks. And sort of see how you feel about it. But I really like the idea of you being like, it's different today. Day 1, it's different. I'm coming in, I'm getting after it. I'm, not going to skip the mobility. I'm not going to crack the joke of the, like, I crack my knuckles and they're like, yep, I warmed up, like that kind of thing. Cause that's just not going to help you. By week 3 or 4, you're going to be hurting and wondering, what's the point of all this extra stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I remember like I think anybody who's ever played somewhat competitive sports as a kid, like, the difference between the last game of the season and the first game of playoffs, it's like I still walked into the same locker room. I still took the bus with the same people, but like there's just a little bit different vibe to it, right? It's like everybody's maybe a little bit more keyed up. Maybe the headphones are on. A few more dudes who would normally be, yucking it up and whatever. You walk into the locker room and you can just feel a little bit different. The air is a little bit thicker. There's a little bit of tension in a positive way for the most part. And I think that's kind of what correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're kind of getting
exactly
at. And that's what you want it to be, because that's how you kind of tell yourself that, hey, this is different. This isn't just another normal training Monday. It's like, hey, I'm actually like, we're getting into this. And I do think there's value in that, regardless of whether you're shooting to qualify for the CrossFit Games or are that, community athlete. Because odds are, if you're listening to this, you've got this far into the podcast, you're either paying us or paying somebody else for custom or for competitive programming. Like, if you're doing all of those things, then like, let's bring it home. Let's get the cherry on top, which is the little bit of like a little kind of grit in the teeth, so to speak, and like getting ready to really get after it for a few weeks and see what you're capable of. Because I think, again, if you've poured as much time and energy into getting better as I would assume if you're listening to this podcast, then like that's the date that it's like, hey, this is going to be a little bit different for the next 6 weeks. And before you even get there, I would say like between now, when you're listening to this, and January 13th, like take a little bit of time to think about it. The next time you sit on the bike for your zone 2 session, think to yourself, like, what does that mean? Because you can't expect to just walk into the gym and be like, it's different. It's like, you might be the only one in the gym who's doing that. So it's like, you have to kind of set the environment. You have to kind of set your own parameters for what it means to be that this day is a little bit different than the other ones. So take a little bit of time to think about what that actually means, what that means for like, is my schedule going to change a little bit? Or what happens when the volume does go up a little bit? Yep, I am going to have to make adjustments of X, Y, or Z in my personal life, my training schedule, my work schedule, whatever it happens to be. Just think about those things a little bit ahead of time. Don't just expect like January 13th to roll around and that to happen. You have to fabricate that in a way and kind of manifest it a little bit, and then January 13th rolls around and you're it's like, then it feels a little bit different. So don't just expect the calendar to turn over and that to change. You gotta set that up a little bit for yourself or your training group, whatever, training partners, whatever.
I'd say 90% of the motivation for us to harp on something like this is we keep track of you guys throughout the year, right? Like, they're posting on Discord all the time, posting on Instagram all the time, these groups of people getting together to follow the programming. Like, so much time and effort has been put into this, and just the idea of entering this with a little bit of a different mindset and asking a little bit more of yourself will give you that sort of like the payoff of all of the work that you've done, of you kind of locking in on it. Because people in some instances, to sort of maybe save their ass, will go through the motions a little bit and say they don't care, or, make sure that they're not, putting out there, I want to qualify for semifinals, that kind of thing. And we want the opposite. Like, if you really somewhere deep down inside you think it's possible, maybe even not this year, but, at some point in your career, then that's the kind of thing we want you to put out into the world and like grind. I would say it's more impressive for you to put yourself out there like that than it is for you to, like, on the off chance come in, 1,999th. After.
I mean, I would rather see and work with somebody who does put that out there and proceeds to fall flat on their face in competition than somebody who puts in the work throughout the year and then decides open 26.1 like, I don't know about all this.
Cool.
Like, I feel bad. Like, fuck the CrossFit Open. It's like, God, like, piss off, man. Like,
yeah.
Come on now.
So what that means essentially for me is that I have 13 days to install a large subwoofer in my car and burn a CD with Slipknot and Eminem on it and drive to Scarborough High School and really get in the zone.
Oh yeah.
Look out over those fields. Oh my goodness.
There's odds are there's a vehicle parked there right now that you don't even need to modify, that is already meeting those standards and requirements.
Dude. You can't even hear the music because the license plate's rattling so hard.
The fucking hubcaps are fucking rolling around in the parking lot.
Oh boy. All right. Before that, one other thing that you guys will see, weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4 are something called a Metcon reset. And you're looking at it day 1 and you're like, wow, this is a weird interval. It's not, I promise. So here's the idea. Week 7.
We have that article. Sorry, before you start, you wrote an article on this, right?
Yeah.
Seb, we should probably get that like linked to day 1 so people aren't confused as shit why they have like
for sure
43 seconds of rest after like their 8.5th wall ball. Sorry, carry on.
How can I expect someone to have, before the peaking schedule, day 1, week 1, to have the game speed of 25.1 in week 7? That's not really the kind of ask that we can have. But one of the things that happens in this sport is when we do rev up the intensity, we don't have the historical data of how we react to moving that way and attacking a workout that way. So what we do for the first 4 weeks is we ask you to move at game speed throughout the entire workout like you normally would, and give you strategically placed rest so that that is possible for you to do. So the way that you would look at it is you would look at it like it was straight through, either 4-time or as an AMRAP. And you'd look at it and, there's rowing and wall balls and power snatch. And we're not asking you to go as hard as you can right before the rest and then recover and go really hard again and continue to do that. We're asking you to figure out how hard would you go in a competition setting over the course of the entire workout, which is just a slight increase in intensity throughout the entire thing versus like beating the clock going into a rest period. And then recovering and, again, making that possible during the rest period. So it's just important. Like, one of the notes that I write in a remote coaching setting all the time is this is not in an interval. Like, a lot of CrossFitters will really like stomp the gas pedal and finish hard in an interval, and that's not what we're looking for. We want a slight increase, a slight elevation in intensity throughout the entire workout in an sort of an even way. With the rest periods making it possible to do that. So for the first 4 weeks, any of the Metcons that you're going to do, you're just going to notice these little like, oh, rest 30 seconds after this set, rest a minute after this set, that sort of thing. We want game speed CrossFit the entire time, which is possible through monostructural conditioning intervals, CrossFit intervals, and then sliding in these little like nuggets of rest into a Metcon reset.
Yeah, and this is equal parts an athlete IQ exercise that is going to force you to read the workout a little bit. So anytime you see these pieces, you have to read through like the entire thing, read through the whole workout, look at the stimulus, look at the duration. Like if you have a short conditioning piece approach for a long duration Metcon reset, like obviously that's not going to work in the same way that it wouldn't work well in a regular interval, but use it as a good opportunity as well to like think about like how long does, let's say, 4 clean and jerks and 3 muscle ups take me, like, and then can I repeat that? What if I think to myself that I can do 2 rounds of that every minute? It's like, really? So you can do 6 muscle ups every minute for 10 minutes. Like, congratulations, you just did 60 right? And it's like we start to dig down the rabbit hole a little bit as far as like, oh, what if, if I execute my plan the way that I think it's going to, what is this actually going to look like on paper or, in the video during execution? And then you can maybe point out like, I've just done my my 45th deadlift in 2 minutes. Is that actually realistic for me, or is it like, no, that's actually telling me that what I thought about my effort level or my pace was incorrect, and I need to make that adjustment? And then there's part of the idea of those super short rest periods is that little adjustment. It's not long enough to recover. It's not supposed to be long enough to recover and repeat. It's supposed to be long enough to be like, yeah, oops, I made a fatal tactical error, and one more stupidly paced round like that, and I'm going to blow my entire workout up. So just think about it like in terms of start the interval by doing a little bit of whiteboard math as far as how long we think this is going to take, what your actual plan would result in the clock or in your rounds plus reps score, and then do a little bit of audit of thinking to yourself, big picture, like, yeah, is 30 muscle ups in 3 minutes like realistic? Maybe not. Okay, I need to adjust my pace. There's something has to give here.
So that's basically the breakdown of open prep that you are going to see on our Hatchet and age group programs. If you're listening to this podcast and you're an MFT athlete, you're 100% positive that you are going to qualify for the online semifinal, then your program is going to be different. And almost everything that we talked about when it comes to the lifting and the movement biases is actually the same. There's just going to be an opportunity to personalize the program a lot more. So you're, in-workout lifting, squat snatch, volume back squat, volume clean and jerk, all of that stuff is there. But then there's non-mandatory deadlifting, pressing, benching, power cleans, etc. There are some real special conditioning tests. You have the FTP test on the bike, which if you've never done that before, the localized muscle fatigue of 20 minutes for max wattage on the C2 bike is real special. Your cube test is going to be running. And there's either you can do the air runner for calories, which is brutal on the hamstrings, can say. And then if you do not have an air runner, it's 4x1K run, rest 4 minutes. And then last but not least is Clio. This is the workout that people have been testing for me via Instagram. 10, 20, 30, 40, 30, 20, 10. Echo bike calories, row calories, ski calories. So far, 75% of the testers have gone too hard on the row, a little too hard on the ski, and really slow on the Echo bike. Your athlete IQ on the Echo bike, because they start out too hot, and when they get back to it, they think, again, for some reason, people see 10-calorie Echo bike. It's like, well, this is a 25 to 35 minute workout. So,
what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. So I'll just throw it out there that
actually
athlete IQ and do a little bit of math is incredibly important there. A bit of a preview. Instead of 9 weeks, there will be no retesting. It will be 8 weeks long, and then you will begin semifinals prep in week 9. And that is online semifinals prep. Good thing about you figuring out your season and what it means and where you're going to go, semifinals prep will be delivered as a standalone program on Fitter, so you can decide when you want to do your 7-week semifinals prep peaking. It will be I think they refer to it as like a fixed schedule, fixed duration kind of a thing. So you'll be able to let us know that, hey, I qualified, blah, 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 and we will make sure that you get the free code, and you'll be able to follow that. But for everybody else, weeks 1 through 8, weeks 7 and 8 take you through the open, and then you will start semifinals prep. The age group, we're going to have to do an entire podcast about this. As an age group athlete, and feel free to go right into Discord and start asking questions. I have this all mapped out for the different scenarios. But you have to decide as an age group athlete, am I peaking for the open? Am I peaking for semifinals? Or am I peaking for the CrossFit Games? And I think that the age group community is the most unique when it comes to this, because you sort of, unless they change things, which we'll see, unless they change things, it's kind of cut and dry how good you have to be to make it out of the Open, how good you have to be to make it out of semifinals. So like remote clients that I can think of that you and I have don't need to peak for the Open or semifinals.
Yeah.
They need to peak for the CrossFit Games. So they can follow a pretty sort of traditional schedule, follow along with the programming. But for those other athletes, like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to make it to semifinals. You're going to actually have to start semifinals prep like a few weeks into Open prep, which is interesting. You guys will have access to all of these programs, especially if you stay in touch with us on Discord. But if you want to work through if you are which person you are, we can talk to you about the math of previous seasons and how many people advance and all that good stuff. So it's complicated when you think about it from like a macro perspective, but once you sort of lock in on what you're trying to peak for, we'll tell you exactly how to follow what program, and it's just back to work doing the stuff that we ask you to do. But there are 3 separate scenarios there. So if you are serious about the CrossFit Games Masters season, teen season, make sure you let us know in Discord, and I'm happy to, either do it in the Masters channel or via DMs, and just, sort of go back and forth and let you guys know how that's all going to work.
What's the Clio namesake?
Pyramid, Cleopatra. Also a bit of a Frank Ocean nod, if we've got any Frank Ocean fans out there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is that like Ocean's 11? Frank Ocean? Talking about
goodness.
George Clooney?
Oh, my God.
I'm kidding. Even I know who Frank Ocean is. Couldn't name a single song by him, but
Pyramid?
I know he's a guy. He's a guy.
He's famous because he doesn't make music, actually, which is kind of funny. He hasn't made an album in like a decade.
Oh, really?
Everyone wants him to make an album. He's like, nah, I'm good.
Every time I hear you guys talk about Frank Ocean, I'm just like, yeah, it's a fucking sick movie. Matt Damon, George Clooney.
You legitimately, though, did not know who Pharrell was at one point.
That is true. That is 100% true.
And the funny thing is,
Sebastian, keep your head down. Fucking producer.
The funny thing, speaking of producer, he produced like every pop song that you listened to during your teens.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. He also sang on half of them. He's the guy with the high-pitched voice. All right, so...
Guy with the shoulder pads.
Guy with the shoulder pads. All right. Monday, January 13th, misfitathletics.com, or you can just head right to our social media. We'll have links aplenty in stories, in the link in bio. You can go straight to Fitter and get that 14-day free trial. We'll turn that back on pretty soon, pretty close to when this podcast drops, so that when you do get signed up, yes, look at that hat. Amazing.
Is that Frank Ocean?
No. Damn it. Damn it, Hunter.
That Texas
you can
bill.
get signed right up for your 14-day free trial. Discord.gg/Misfit Athletics to join our free Discord community if you need help in reading the number next to your open finish. If you want Hunter to tell you...
You want me to tell you?
If you want Hunter to tell you no, if it doesn't say first place in the open, Hunter's probably going to tell you no.
I'll tell you to fuck off. Yeah.
If you are, again, I mean, a big part of this is just... This is a change in the way that they're doing things, a change in the season, and if you want to continue to play 99 times out of 100, going over to Hatchet and following this peaking schedule is going to be the best thing that you can do. And I guess the only other thing that I'll say here is there's always equipment modifications and scaling related to this. So our Hatchet program has... you work out in a garage, you don't have the machine conversion, or you don't know what to do because you don't have rings or rope or whatever it is. We tell you what the conversion is. And then if you're listening to this, you're like, hey, I am an open athlete, but that used to mean something different. We have scaling options built into all of those workouts on Hatchet. So covers a lot of bases there. Hunter, final thoughts.
Yeah, you really zipped past your zipped it right over to me.
I'm ready. Let me go first.
Yeah, go for it. Send it.
So There's, again, this wouldn't have been my final thoughts had I not read a bunch of workouts doing the notes for this. There is a simplicity to this program that gives you the opportunity to just kind of execute it without having to get your secret decoder ring out to sort of figure things out. Every once in a while, there's, you jump into that CrossFit class and there's just that workout that's, I don't know, dumbbell snatch, run, and burpee, or who knows what it is, but there's just the amount of reps in the time domain and the setting allows for one of the best workouts that you've had in months. There are a lot of workouts like that built into this, where like anytime we were on the fence of should it be this many reps or this weights, where we sort of dialed it back a little bit. And that puts so much of the power into the hands of the athlete versus the programmer, right? We're giving you guys the opportunity to go get after it. And you're going to notice that, again, when you log in and that first full week is laid out in front of you, and you're going to get to see like if you're an inexperienced athlete, you might look at it and go like, is this really going to get me ready for things? And if you're an experienced athlete, you're going to say, oh shit,
God damn it.
It's all on me, 100% on me. I'm going to be able to push the entire time. And that's going to create an incredibly different stimulus than, say some crazy muscle endurance chipper that we programmed for you in October.
Yeah. I'll just kind of add on to that. I've never have I ever had a high-level athlete do a hatchet workout, a hatchet phase, or an entire training year. And one of my Masters CrossFit Games athlete did hatchet the entire year leading up to the CrossFit Games. And I've never once had an athlete say that was too easy, nor have I ever but I have frequently heard MFT athletes, people who are following the MFT program, justifiably or not, say that is too hard, I'm getting buried by this. Okay.
Yep.
It's like you are not going to go wrong by going with the hatchet program. And to what you were just saying is that, and you kind of alluded to it at the very beginning of the phase, like what's on, like any Tom, Dick, or Harry can put together these movements, and in a pseudo accurate or a pseudo like effective rep scheme, it doesn't matter unless the athlete executes it with the intensity that the workout calls for. Like it doesn't, none of it matters unless you are putting in the effort. You cannot go through just seeing the training pieces each day in your app or wherever you receive the programming and say like, yep, I'm just going to go through the motions on each of these things and assume that the program is going to make me fitter. It will not. Like the program will just bury you without receiving the benefit of getting fitter, unless you are specifically putting your eggs in this basket, or I'm going to go snatch today, I'm really working on pulling under the bar quicker. When we get to that rowing Metcon or the rowing interval, the row bitch work, row burpee double under monstrosity, like, yeah, I need to give that everything I've got today, because that is what the Open is going to call for, and that's how I'm going to get to online semifinals, assuming that's your goal. But do not think that just because the program is written for competitive CrossFitters that simply by executing the program you are going to get fitter. Like, you'll get a little bit fitter, but in order to maximize it, you have to give it the intensity that it deserves.
Open prep in phase 3 begin Monday, January 13th at misfitathletics.com, or the link in bio anywhere on our social media platforms. Draw that line in the sand, cross through the gym that day, bring something different in terms of effort, in terms of habits, all that good stuff. And I think you'll be really happy. And again, make sure that if you are not already in there, discord.gg/Misfit Athletics is how you get signed up for our free Discord community. I'm stoked for everybody to get started on this. Just the quarterfinals prep went so well last year for a bunch of the reasons that we talked about here. So being able to bring that to you guys for the Open and the new structure is exciting for us. And we'll see you next week.
Later.